Listen, I am not chill about Nelly Furtado. Her first album came out 25 years ago. She is still giving us hits. Right now, between a new song and a celebrated Tiny Desk concert, she's the talk of the town. So today on the podcast, it is time to give Nelly her flowers. I'm Elamin Abdul Mahmoud, and this is Commotion. All right, you know where we got to start. We got to do it, so let's do it. From 2001, that is the song that turned Nelly Furtado into Canada's biggest pop star back in the Y2K era. This is Like a Bird. The version that you're hearing right now aired just a little over a week ago as a part of NPR's Tiny Desk concert series. Just the latest stop on this whirlwind, triumphant comeback campaign from Nelly Furtado that's been gaining more and more steam with each passing day. Listen, her hits from nearly 20 years ago are blowing up on TikTok now. She just hosted the Junos. She just hit a major milestone on YouTube. One of her songs crossed 1 billion streams, which is just incredible. And she recently just dropped some new music from her first new album in 7 years. So to talk about this Nelly Furtado moment, Susie Exposito and Rosie Longdector are here. Rosie and Susie, what's going on, y'all? Welcome to the show.
Hello, hello.
Hello. I'm delighted that you're both here. I'm ready to get into this moment in Nelly. Rosie, I'll start with you. Watching that Tiny Desk from Nelly Furtado, it took me kind of back to this era where Nelly Furtado was just like one of the big stars around when she was first blowing up. What did she mean to you back then?
Oh, she goes deep into my childhood for sure. Like growing up, those first two albums, especially, parents could get behind those. We had those in the car, like those CDs were always in the side door of the car. Um, and I think she was doing this kind of singer-songwriter folk, she looked up to Ani DeFranco, but then also bringing in this like club kid aesthetic, this like underground aesthetic.
Yeah.
And it really felt like fresh and interesting and something that both like the kids and the parents were into at the time in Canada. She was kind of hitting that like Canada folk rock sort of core, but also bringing something different to it. I remember also being like 11 when Loose came out and being like all high and mighty and like, she sold out. She's gone mainstream. I was like, it's not for me. But now I hear those tracks from Loose and I'm like, it's perfect pop music. It's amazing. Yeah. And yeah, it's deep in me for sure. So I'm rooting for her.
Listen, I remember that turn from the folk rock stuff to Loose, and I was like, is this the same artist? It can't possibly be the same artist, because you're right. Like there was something democratic about the first couple of albums in the sense of like you take the energy of an Ani DeFranco and then you go, can we give it a hip hop beat? Can this marriage sort of work? And it felt cross-generational. It sort of felt like it's music that, every radio station could sort of agree on. And then Loose came out and then everything just shifted into an entirely different direction. And you know what? It took a lot of people a moment to get comfortable with it. Susie, I got to ask you, listen, Nelly is like certified icon status here in Canada. I wonder if it's been a different journey in the United States. What does it look like from where you're standing?
Well, I actually thought she was Latina at first, so I was really excited. Turns out she's Portuguese. She's the child of Portuguese immigrants, which is still really cool, and different, I loved her trip hop influences. I loved that. Yeah, she sort of inherited the Joni Mitchell, like bohemian singer-songwriter vibe, but made it very edgy and of the time, but also still very enduring, I think. And so when she came out with Loose and she was working with Timbaland, who we know is just a prolific hit maker, I was, this was 2006. So I was in high school. I was 16 and at summer camp, and we were really raging promiscuous. Look out, summer camp dance. But yeah, it was a great time. But yeah, when she came out with Loose, by that point, she was also a mother, and I think she was really struggling with the challenges of, releasing like her biggest record to date and also having a toddler.
Mm-hmm.
And she did take a break after the Loose tour. Just after everything was it just got too overwhelming,
Mm-hmm.
which I could understand. But these weren't just, Man Eater, Promiscuous Girl, like these weren't just landmark pop songs. They were also testaments to her retaining her sexuality, owning her sexuality, and being a pop star and being a mother all at the same time. I won't say she was the first to do this. I mean, Madonna, having a baby between Evita and Ray of Light
Yeah.
in her late 30s, that was awesome, and she definitely paved the way for more pop stars to be able to balance motherhood and pop stardom. But Nelly did it with so much style.
Listen, all this talk about Loose, if y'all don't mind, can we just play this real quick? Come on. From 2006 album Loose, that is Nelly Furtado, that is Say It Right. This is a song that recently crossed that 1 billion stream threshold on YouTube. Rosie, I'm interested in the idea that Nelly Furtado in the year 2024 has this longevity, has this sort of endurance of these songs that we were introduced to as perfect pop songs from 2006 that still sort of have this life. So hits from the 2000s have had these resurgence on YouTube, but also on TikTok. What do you think it is about her music that makes it relevant to younger audiences right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something to do with the way that pop culture does sort of have this cycle of looking back to the pop music of 20, 25 years ago. Tate McRae, who's one of the biggest recent Canadian breakouts, she was inspired by Nelly Furtado on her album from last year.
Yeah.
Her producer, Ryan Tedder, he talked about how he's got this quote in the cover story that Billboard did on Tate McRae where he says, I've been around long enough that I know when these cycles are coming back. And he was like, I knew that the moment was right, So it was, people are feeling a Nelly moment. People are feeling a Timbaland moment. Leigh Banks is another artist who's been blowing up on TikTok. She's got a song that references Pony by Genuine, which is also Timbaland produced. Sean Desmond's having this moment. So it feels like everyone's really into that kind of Y2K sound, which is really like sort of synonymous with Timbaland. And I think it's that he was bringing in hip hop, he was bringing in R&B, blending it with this like huge pop sound ready for radio. And also there's something a bit futuristic about it. There's something a bit like, the way he uses his voice as part of the beats. And I think to me, at least, like that era is more timeless and more long lasting than the kind of EDM pop moment that came after that early 2010s moment. Really, I'll be curious to see if it has a resurgence, because it was, to me, that's not the era of pop we want to look back to. And that era is where you see sort of Nelly having an album, The Spirit Indestructible, that struggled to connect, and you can hear her kind of struggling to do that sound. So I think the moment is right. People are looking 20 years ago, and Nelly's there with her attitude, her style, and it fit perfectly with Timbaland's production style, I think.
Damn, Rosie's not checking for Skrillex. Okay, I understand where you fall on the spectrum. That's okay. It's allowed. Susie, what's your read on this? What's your read on why Nelly Furtado is having this resurgence right now with younger people?
I think it's just her being a former raver. Her music, it translates to this current moment of like her connection to dance music has been very consistent throughout her career.
Yeah.
And it blends in seamlessly with a lot of dance music of this time. I think about how a lot of the main pop girls right now are making club music. I think about, like Dua Lipa. I think about the fact that Sabrina Carpenter just sounds like, Kylie Minogue 2.0 to me. But yeah, there's a lot of disco happening, a lot of like fun, fun dance club energy. And so I think that's key to her endurance, is just like staying connected, but also, you know, with the R&B influence. I think about Tinashe's song Nasty.
Yeah.
I feel like that would have been a song that Nelly Furtado could have done in the 2000s.
Yeah.
You know, the vibe is so cheeky. And I think that's the vibe that a lot of young women are going for.
I think if anybody is listening and has any ideas, a nasty remix with Nelly Furtado would do wonders for many people. Just putting this out into the universe. Okay, let's hear a little bit of what Nelly Furtado is up to right now.
I want your body on mine, boy, you're looking too fine. The way your love bites, got me dreaming about the time left your mark on my mind. Give me more of that kind. The way your love bites, got me dreaming about you. Call me, go ahead now. Taste me, go ahead now. Want me, go ahead.
Nelly Furtado, Tove Lo and S.G. Lewis. This song is called Love Bites. It is a teaser from a new album. We're sort of expecting this album sometime this year. I gotta say, Rosie, when you hear that, it's not the sound that I expected Nelly to come back with. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I was just hating on EDM pop. I do love that she's having like a dance moment.
Yes.
And I think there's different elements of dance music going on there that are maybe not bringing me back to 2012 quite as much.
Sure.
But I think in this track, like, I think the elements are there. It doesn't quite have the hook that's bringing me in. But I do love that she's like having fun. I really liked the track she put out with Dom Dalla last year.
Yeah.
Eat Your Man. That one's like, let me get sweaty. You know, that one's
Yeah.
really dance floor ready. This one, it's like, it's a little bit of it feels like a little taste of what's to come. And I'm like, okay, let me see where we're going with this. But I do love that she's kind of feeling herself and having a bit of a hot girl moment. She's single again, and she's like having fun and confident and doing that in her 40s, which is, you know, you want to look ahead and be like, yeah, I can have fun in my 40s.
I was gonna say, like, Susie, like, this particular moment in pop is very young. Like, it's a particularly young moment in pop. We haven't had a moment this young in pop in a minute. You know, you have Billie Eilish, you have Sabrina Carpenter, you have a million other people, of course, Olivia Rodrigo, Chappelle Rowan. It's interesting to me to drop a major pop album into this particular landscape when you are an artist over 40. What do you make of how Nelly Furtado fits into the current pop landscape?
I don't think it's an awkward fit at all.
Okay.
Madonna just played the biggest concert of anyone in history in Brazil. You know, over 1 million people turned out in Rio. And I think that, you know, like I think about Kylie Minogue being 55 when she put out Padam Padam last year.
And it was,
that
like,
was
one of the songs of the summer. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that this is a great time for her to come back. And I think that the pop landscape, even though right now the charts skew very young, I think she's still got a shot, just because we live in a society where I mean, thanks to women like Cher and Madonna, they can still crank it out, and people will still listen to them.
Well, something I'm really grateful for is, as my pal Tom Power put it, like, it's not often that you get to see an artist, particularly women, climb the mountaintop twice, which is like to say, like, in the earlier part of their career, be at the very peak, and then, 20 years later come back and have this massive moment, this massive sort of Nelly Furtado-sance. And I'm really grateful to be living through that. And so I got to say, Rosie and Susie, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for your energy. Thank you.
Thanks, Elamine.
Of course.
Yeah.
Susie Exposito is a music journalist based in Los Angeles, and Rosie Longdecter is a writer for Billboard Canada and Maisonneuve in Montreal. By the way, Nelly Furtado's latest single is called Love Bites, but that album is expected out later this year. I'm I'm Alamin Abdul Mahmoud, and this is Commotion. Okay, we are going to switch gears. I want to talk about a brand new Apple TV show. It's called The Big Cigar, and it centers on the life of Huey P. Newton, the co-founder and leader of the Black Panther Party. This show is set during a very specific period where Huey is on the run from authorities, and it explores what happens when Huey's goals as an activist cross paths with 1970s-era Hollywood. Take a listen.
The story I'm about to tell you is how I, Huey P. Newton, the Black Panther Party founder, was set free into a prison.
All right, listen up. We're gonna get Huey to Cuba in the next 48 hours.
What we do is we make it look like it's one of your movies.
It's a location shoot as far as the feds are concerned. We got hair, makeup, wardrobe. What movie are we talking about? The Big Cigar.
That is a bit of the trailer for The Big Cigar. It is based on a true story that is honestly pretty hard to believe. David Dennis Jr. is here with his thoughts on all of this. David, welcome to the show, friend.
Thanks for having me, man.
Hey, man, welcome back. Listen, okay, before we dig in, can you just explain briefly why Huey P. Newton is on the run in this moment in his life in the first place?
Yeah, so this comes at sort of a very tumultuous time in his life that is sort of, touched on, but, they get to the big picture here is the fact that he is on the run because he's alleged to have killed a 17-year-old sex worker. And there was obviously he has plenty of run-ins with the law, and the FBI is always involved. And so there's questions about the veracity of what happened, what didn't happen. But we do know that there is suspect that he has done this, and he needs to get out the country as quickly as possible.
Okay, so when we get into the show, The Big Cigar centers specifically on Huey's relationship with Hollywood producer Bert Schneider, and particularly like 70s Bert Schneider. Bert Schneider was like a huge deal in Hollywood. He made movies like Easy Rider. He made the Oscar-winning documentary Hearts and Minds. He's one of the creators of the Monkees in the 60s, which is like a pretty wild sort of resume for Bert Schneider to have. What do you think drew Schneider to Huey P. Newton's cause?
Well, I mean, I think it's also important to note that Schneider is an extreme Nepo baby also. So he, like all of these things that got him in this position came a lot from his father and the stuff that he did. Yes. And so Schneider is sort of part of this movement in California, especially of, what we would call now sort of the liberal Hollywood agenda of folks who want to be involved in these movements, right? And so who want to have some sort of access and some sort of way to narratively grab a hold of the sort of left wing, maybe communism, maybe, movements that are going on. And the Black Panther Party is sort of the perfect place for that. And so he was really infatuated with Newton. Apparently he had a picture of Newton on his desk and Black Panthers and all that stuff. So he was really wanted to be involved with what they had going on.
Okay, so I can understand the sort of political and social capital it would maybe give someone like Bert Schneider to be involved with someone like Huey. What is in it for Huey P. Newton to be involved with Hollywood at all at this point?
Well, one is money. Schneider was footing a lot of bills. He was paying for some of Newton's legal fees, things like that. But they were also just cutting these checks. So they were funding the movement in a lot of ways. And also there is a sort of a notoriety that comes with this. It puts you in different spaces to, influence other people. As we see in the show, Huey P. Newton and Richard Pryor have a friendship. So it allows you to sort of spread the message by getting in these different rooms. But also just the first thing we see about him is the fact that he's cutting this massive check.
Okay, so what I want to do is play a clip from the show. This is an exchange between Bert Schneider and Huey P. Newton. Take a listen.
Hollywood's always been late to the party, but these people are trying to change all that. You're looking at the world's best storytellers, and there's no politics without a story.
Yeah, but what story you trying to tell? And why should you tell it?
No, not tell it. Just make it possible. I want to finance the revolution.
Like right after that moment cuts out, there's somebody who's sort of standing in the background and he goes like, he just writes the checks and gets out of the way. It's a significant moment from this new Apple TV show, The Big Cigar, about the Black Panther Party leader, Huey P. Newton. David, what did you make of that exchange? What did you make of what you just heard there?
I mean, it's sort of a meta commentary, right, about this show itself, about the idea that you need sort of these white folks to believe in something that and believe in your project for it to get made. And this is something that is directly aligned with the ideals of Don Cheadle, who is, somebody behind the scenes of this.
He directed a bunch of the episodes of this.
Directed a bunch of episodes. And his belief has been, I've interviewed Don Cheadle many years ago, and his belief is that you need white folks and something that gets white people to have a movie like this made, right? Yeah. Which is Don Cheadle made the Miles Davis biopic many years ago, and it turned into this heist story similar to this, where you have a white character in there, and it sort of takes away from the story, and you feel like, but you have to feel like you need to appeal to a white audience or white Hollywood execs to have this stuff made, and so this idea that white people feel like they can film or document the revolution is something that you got to kind of convince them that they are a part of.
In many ways, like, it's exactly what you just said, that this idea of the show is a meta commentary on the actual process through which you need, the machinery that you need to use in order to get a message out. And to that end, I actually kind of want to talk about the tone of the show, because it's like it's hard to sort of like wrap your mind around the tone of the show. Huey P. Newton was this controversial figure. He's also responsible for bringing important food initiatives to Black communities across the U.S., but he faced a lot of charges, including, as you mentioned, the alleged killing of a 17-year-old sex worker. It should say that the charges for those ended with 2 hung juries. He was never convicted of this. But the point is, he is controversial. And then yet in the show, you get this tone that is moving between the very serious and the kind of hilarious. They're sort of like playing up like the 70s as, the 70s itself as an era is played for comedic effect. What'd you make of the tone that this show took to address these stories?
Well, the tone was pretty off-putting, honestly, and again, it reminded me of that Miles Davis movie. Like, we're talking about Huey P. Newton, we're talking about like this revolutionary group in California, and you feel like, why can't we just get a Huey P. Newton bio story? Why do we have to involve
a straightforward
this
biopic?
Comedy? Very straightforward biopic, which I feel, which I think Don Cheadle would say that you can't make in 2024 because you need sort of this, and to be fair, that this was based on an article written by the same guy who wrote the article that Fargo is based on. And that movie was made much faster than this one. It takes a lot of time. So there is something to that. But the fact is, like, I watch this and I'm like, why are these white guys, like, why do we need these like happy-go-lucky comedy white guys in a Huey P. Newton story? Like, why does this have to be the way that we talk about Huey P. Newton and the Black Panther Party? Because this may be your only shot. Like, how many more of these are we going to make? And it feels like we could have done something that spoke to the spirit of that movement without involving this like comedy relief act about things that are quite serious, about something about a 17-year-old who was killed. And, afterwards, in the aftermath of this, there was witness, tampering or coercion or intimidation, attempted assassination plot of witnesses, things like that. Like, this is not something that is a throwaway story. This is a very serious thing, and this played up for laughs in a way that's jarring and kind of disappointing to see.
I have to say that the idea of it being jarring resonated with me, because you're totally right. Like, I don't see like Netflix and Amazon being like, well, what we should do is also make a Huey P. Newton project. Like, when these things get made, it sort of takes it off the table for a little while, It is worth noting that, like, your father, David Dennis Sr., was an activist in the time that this series was set. He was also one of the original freedom riders. I imagine watching this series hits a little bit differently for you than regular audiences.
Yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, I'm watching this, and on a very personal, full disclosure level, the idea, like, I wrote a book about my dad in his movement time, and thinking about hopefully somebody turning this into a TV show and turning this into a movie, and watching this and thinking about how these stories get told, because, like, I wrote a very Black book that is centering Black people, and I would not want something like this to be part of that story, to take this one moment and make that story palatable. Don't make it at all if you feel like you have to do that. So the moments of the movement stuff, the moments of Huey P. Newton, the incredible acting that was done to portray Huey P. Newton, like, those are the things that resonated with me, but also that the spirit of his story is kind of lost in translation in the way that it's presented.
I got maybe 30 seconds left here. Should Hollywood be involved in trying to tell these stories at all? Do you think Hollywood is equipped to tell these stories at all?
I mean, I think to the clip that we just showed, I think the thing to do is just cut the check and get out the way. You know, I mean, that's really what it is.
The
like,
model is
check.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, the model's there. Cut the check, get out the way, because people make these movies. They're good, and like they are Black-centered movies that perform and over-index perform well in any situation because the audience is there. You just have to believe in it.
David Dennis Jr., that's a perfect place to leave it. I appreciate you and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thanks a lot.
Of course. David Dennis Jr. is a veteran music journalist and culture critic based in Atlanta, Georgia. You can catch all the episodes of The Big Cigar right now on Apple TV. And listen, that is it for the show today. My name is Alamin Abdul Mahmoud. This show is called Commotion. We are going to be back tomorrow. I'll see you then.